in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks.
The U.S. has acknowledged that it engaged in torture, that it operated a program whereby it abducted men from around the world, put them in secret detention, and tortured them. But there's been no accountability for these abuses. The Senate torture report that came out in December of last year really shed light on the brutality and the systematic nature of the abuses, and it was much more widespread and much more brutal than we thought.
Detainees were subjected to the most aggressive techniques immediately, stripped naked, diapered, physically struck, and put in various painful stress positions for long periods of time. They were deprived of sleep for days, in one case up to 180 hours. That's 7.5 days, over a week with no sleep.
The word torture was never used. What I was told was, you will do, it was like this, you will do whatever it takes to get this man to talk. Do you understand? And I said, well, we would need at least a presidential finding, which means a direct order from the president to do something like that. And he said, well, we have it. We're covered.
The Bush administration early on decided that it would fight terrorism not simply lawfully, but by using torture. But it recognized that it had a legal problem on its hand. Torture is flatly prohibited by international law and U.S. criminal law. So it needed to provide some kind of legal cover for the illegal policy it decided to pursue. It did that by having a group of senior officials combine with some unsavory lawyers to produce indefensible legal positions, pieces of paper that future officials could then wave around and say, aha, I wasn't violating the law. A senior White House or Justice Department lawyer said this was legal.
The authority to use enhanced interrogation had reached as far as the president, the vice president, the attorney general, the national security advisor, the CIA director, and many others within the administration. So this was an institutional administration decision that was taken with full knowledge of the legal issues at stake and the policy at stake. And despite this knowledge, they nonetheless decided to go forward and apply what we now know to be torture.
So I went to one of the agency lawyers and I said, what is torture? What is the legal definition of torture? What are we allowed to do or not? And the answer was, if a measure does not cause vital organ failure and/or, I remember the and/or death, it is not torture. Which I thought was crazy, because that justifies anything.
This heightened extreme definition of torture was used to approve a number of specific techniques, like waterboarding and stress positions. But the CIA went even beyond that, and they applied techniques that were not authorized and in ways that were not authorized.
Now, we all know that Obama, as far as we can tell, stopped the torture. But nonetheless, despite the basic criminality of torture, he has refused to authorize the broad-based criminal investigations, let alone prosecutions, that were required by the use of torture by the Bush administration.
There's still time to take action. There's no statute of limitations on many of these crimes, and Obama has a year left in office. He shouldn't want failure to account for these very serious abuses to be a part of his legacy.
What we've asked the Justice Department to do is to take a fresh look, a comprehensive look into what has occurred, to basically leave no stone unturned into investigating possible violations, and if any are found, to take the appropriate action as they would in any other matter.
Torture is a crime under U.S. law. To not prosecute for these really serious abuses will just send a signal that the U.S. is not a country that respects the rule of law, and it will make it much more difficult to advocate against torture in other countries around the world.
Obama is essentially leaving the door open for some future unscrupulous president to re-embark on the torture policies of the Bush administration. Only by sending that clear message of criminality can Obama ensure that this ugly chapter of American history is not replicated in the future, when inevitably there will be another future security threat to the United States.